Welcome to Leading Minds Revealed, the podcast that pulls back the curtain on how today's top leaders harness the power of mindfulness to conquer the fast-paced, ever-changing world of business. In each episode, we sit down with C-suite executives and leaders who share their strategies for navigating rapid change with skill and clarity. Join us as we uncover the transformative mindsets that drive extraordinary leadership. These insights aren't found in business books, and they'll revolutionize the way you lead. And now, here's your host, Michael Apollo.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Leading Minds Revealed. Today, we're diving into the fascinating world of leadership, growth, and the power of discomfort. My guest today has an incredibly unique background, spanning the restaurant industry, franchise consulting, and now leading the HR function at Spartan Race, one of the world's most physically and mentally challenging endurance events. He isn't just shaping a company culture at Spartan rooted in resilience and adaptability, he's living it. From his early days managing teams in unfamiliar industries to his commitment to building an HR team that empowers Spartan's frontline warriors, he embodies what it means to lead through discomfort and turn it into growth. With that, please welcome Head of HR and Chief of Staff at Spartan, Daniel McDonald, to the show. Welcome, Dan.
Hey, Michael, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Really looking forward to our time together. It was really great meeting beforehand and just having a chance to get to know about your journey and learn a lot about Spartan too, which is something I was mentioning. My wife has completed a few of the events. I always had ambitions to do so, but never was able to get to it. But now I am. I'm inspired. So, and I find it really interesting because the experience of being uncomfortable can provide us with so much insight into who we are, can help us grow so much. And so I'd love to start there. Let's start with the big idea that's really resonating in today's world, the importance of being comfortable with being uncomfortable. You shared in our prep call that this is a core part of your personal and professional journey. So what does it mean to you to be comfortable with being uncomfortable? And why is this mindset so vital in leadership today?
As you and I were talking earlier, I truly believe that's the only time you actually ever grow in anything you do is by being uncomfortable. The moment you're comfortable with something, you stop trying as hard. I look at runners. Runners don't just run 5Ks or run 5Ks forever, right? They graduate to 10Ks, half marathons, whatever continues to challenge them. So in my world, it's been in my career. I was in restaurants from 14 years old up in North Dakota. I was in restaurants for a long time. And then that got to be where that's not what I wanted to do forever. So I went into manufacturing. And then my wife and I in 2008 got really uncomfortable and uprooted our family from North Dakota to Daytona Beach, Florida. No job. We came down here, found a place to rent, and started all over again, at a point where, we weren't young anymore. So it wasn't like we were doing it in our 20s and we had a kid with us, but we were uncomfortable in it. And I truly believe who I am today is because of that. It's being uncomfortable. So my wife and I, especially in our personal lives and then into our work lives, have always felt that way, that as long as we're challenging the same old, we're going to continue to grow. And it's like, I'm in my 50s. I'm almost 56 years old. At some point you think I'll just take the easy path and just go down that path. That just has never seemed like something I wanted to do. And that's what brought me to Spartan. I was looking at retiring last year, and unfortunately for my wife, who was going to be retired with me and we were going to go travel, in 2021, Joe just randomly posted on Instagram that he was moving his family to Florida and he was going to open up an office and needed some people to come work for him. And so I reached out just on a whim, emailed him, because anybody who knows Joe knows that he drops his email address everywhere he goes. Like, you can always reach out to him. So I did. We met a few months later and he said, what, I don't know what it's going to look like, but I'll be down there in January. We need to figure this out. And that was 3.5 years ago.
Yeah, it points to how important those that we surround ourselves are to help us through those points of discomfort. Your wife and our teams, our leadership, who will constantly push us into these moments where you go, oh wow, I need to lean into this. And how, when you think about those key times, how do you sustain yourself through those moments, those times where you are uncomfortable? You know that you need to go in a different direction, or the team needs to go in a certain direction, or a client needs to go to a certain direction, and or you have to have a challenging conversation. What's sort of the like how do you support yourself through that? Like what are some of the ways that a person can be comfortable with being uncomfortable?
I think it starts out with, we have a belief in how much we can do or what we can do, right? That's we have that belief, like, I can't do more than this, or cold plunge is something that a lot of people are doing, right? I don't want to be cold. I moved to Florida because I don't want to be cold. I know I'm going to be uncomfortable the moment I get in there, but I also see the end. I see that my recovery is going to speed up. It's going to be better, and I know that. So I try to look at the end of whatever it is. I'm a true believer in the answer is always yes. It's not always an easy yes, but it's always yes. Now we got to make that roadmap. So we have the answer, we have the destination, but it's not going to be a straight road. It's not going to be a smooth road. Whatever it is, and I've tried to live my life that way with everything. So when I've jumped from restaurants into manufacturing, I knew nothing about manufacturing. I knew nothing about what that looked like. I knew speed of service in a restaurant, didn't know how I could relate it there. But at the end of the day, I found it was relatable because I just went to the idea, I'm going to figure this out. Now, personally myself, like with our team here at Spartan, when I wondered what it was like to set up our events and get our events ready for our racers, what I did was go be at the event before the event and grabbed a sledgehammer and pounded in stakes and put out the barbed wire and filled up the buckets with rocks and spent time with our team on site to then come back and go, well, now this makes sense. No one knew who I was. I mean, I've been here for only a few months, and I just showed up at an event and said, by the way, I'm Dan. I know I think you know I was coming. Actually, they had only one guy knew I was coming. And I said, what is the job nobody wants to do? They're like, everybody hates putting the barbed wire crawl up. It's a pain. You got to pound in the stakes by hand. We don't have an automatic pounder. You're actually doing the old fashioned slam the T stakes into the ground. You're handling barbed wire. People hate it. I'm like, fantastic. Let's go do that one. And that's just how I've attacked life, is if it's going to make me uncomfortable, I want to try it. I lost my dad when he was 59 years old when I lost him. So I was only 29. And I looked at what he wanted to accomplish, things he wanted to do that he never did. I don't want to be anyone. I don't want my son to say that of me someday. So things like this September, we have a gentleman he's going to be super uncomfortable because he's in a wheelchair, and I'm working with a team that we're going to summit Kilimanjaro with him. So I think I'm going to be uncomfortable doing that. Not even close. What Jeff is going to go through to get up there, and the training he's doing to make sure that he's part of our team, getting him up there, that's uncomfortable. I'm going to be uncomfortable because it's 19,000 feet and I live at sea level. But that is just one of those things that it came my way, and it wasn't a question, am I going to do it? We're just going to go do it. So that's how I've done it. And that's just how I know the end. The end is we're going to be on the top of Kilimanjaro. To get there is all the other stuff. Like, I've never been to Tanzania. I've never had to do all the prep and all that kind of stuff. So it's just the roadmap. So, and I believe that is true in personal life. I believe it's true at work. We are looking at stuff here at Spartan with training that we've never done before. We not sure if we're doing it the right way because we have a new payroll and HRS system, and we're learning how it is. but we're determined we're going to get it done. And every time we do it, fingers are kind of crossed sometimes that we're going to do it the right way and it's going to make sense. So as leaders, I've been doing this for 40 years. And so whether it's somebody's been doing it forever in their one industry or different industries, or it's a brand new manager, brand new leader, if it's going to be uncomfortable, that's the direction you should go. I believe that every time, because that's how you're going to learn something. You learn by being uncomfortable. You get stronger. Again, Spartan Racing. People pay us to crawl under barbed wire, to leave with bruises, leave sometimes with muscles that are really sore and torn. I've cut my head on the barbed wire going through it, and people were uncomfortable. But when they cross that finish line, they're not the same person they were at the start line. And that should be true with your work too. It should, how you work, that's the way you should work. Because again, once you're comfortable, you're probably just complacent at that time.
It's really interesting right now. There's so much talk around AI as a digital. There's just digital disruption. There's geopolitical disruption happening. You look at global trade partnerships. You look at the platforms that we're using. There's so much complexity, so much change that I think it's so important to explore exactly like these elements of what you're saying around embracing discomfort. And because we are going to be forced, so many people right now are being forced to change how they work, change complete professions, learn completely new industries, and it's happening right now. And it's also projected to scale up. It's going to be a massive restructuring. I was listening to Google's former chief design officer, Mo Gaudet, and he was speaking about how we're going to enter a period of time similar to the pandemic where we're going to have to retool society. We're going to have to figure out what our role is and how we approach our work. And there's some really key things I think that you were saying there, in terms of how we can approach this coming time. Because you're right, it's in personal life, professional life, and leadership, in our work. It's a similar thing. It's like there are things that come our way that we don't want to feel uncomfortable, right? And so what's needed is an exploration of how are we relating to it. And this is where I think mindfulness is really interesting. Mindfulness is actually about leaning into discomfort and just being really aware of what shows up when we do that. What's our relationship to this? And what I was hearing from you, there's a perspective to be curious, a perspective to be open. There's this element of trusting that we're going to go through this process and we're going to learn a lot. And guess what? Things might turn out not the way that we want them to, but we're going to have learned. It's not a loss. It's a learning opportunity, right? And there's an element of endurance too, right? I think, the role, like leadership, is not for the faint of heart in the sense, especially in today's society, there is this acknowledgement that it's not going to be easy. We're going to need to lean into it. And so I want to dive into that a little bit here because, at Spartan, you share with me that you're surrounded by young leaders. There's like a real big focus, I know, by you and Joe and the entire team, and people in their first jobs, taking on roles that push them outside their very comfort zone. Exactly what we were just saying. Every day, you've got all these events that you're running globally that people need to be traveling around. And it's interesting that you've also shared how important it is for Spartan's culture to promote from within, sometimes before people even realize they're ready, right? So you've got this really unique culture that's continuously changing, is very fresh, very young, very new. So how does Spartan foster leadership and resilience in this unique environment?
So one of the things that, and this is newer with us. So we've gone from a leadership, especially for our production teams. This is where, and we're going to talk about that right now in particular, because that's where the growth is going with new leaders coming into their role, is the ones on the ground. So in the past, we've had one person be in charge of all of the people, all of the teams on the ground for like the team that does the building of the obstacles, that kind of stuff. And what we found as we got to the end of last year and really dug into it and started talking to the actual people on the ground, tried something, unique there, right? They're like, but we don't feel like a team because we're not always together. It's not always us. We don't have the same foreman. We don't have, that same leadership from event to event to event. So this year we put that in place, which now meant the foreman, who essentially was a really good build crew person and just got paid a little more to be a little more responsible, is now that foreman for that team all year long. Well, that's a change because now they're hiring anybody they're replacing. They're going to be doing the evaluations. They're going to be, that's not what they took the foreman job for. They took the foreman job to move up from the build crew. The construction manager is the one who's supposed to worry about some other sort of stuff. But even the construction manager wasn't hiring. So what did we do? We realized in the HR side that the best thing we could do was start providing trainings specifically to those folks about how do you recruit? How do you interview? Again, I've been doing it for a long time, Michael. You've been talking for a long time. So talking to people and learning about them comes natural. For somebody who's never done it, it's now a challenge. We've brought in our way of doing it. Now we're looking at other options, and there's another company that we're looking to partner with that would even take it to another level once we get the basics in place. But we're doing that on a monthly basis because the one thing I have found over the years is that we could absolutely take everything and put it online, right? And say, it's all there for you. Go find it. We got it all nice and organized for you. Or what we do is monthly, I get on a call, invite everybody to it that wants to come to it. We record it because, again, right now we have 2 events going this weekend. My 2 foremen for those 2 events are not available yesterday for our monthly lunch and learn. So we recorded so they can watch it later. But we covered things. The things we know that I'm not going to tell them during those things how to run the crew on site. That they have, that they're comfortable with. What they're not comfortable with is calling up a person who applied and saying, tell me about you, tell me about your history. That's where they're not comfortable. So my job is to give them the tools to get more comfortable at those things. And that's what we've been doing. So that's the first part, because right now it's recruiting and onboarding season for us. We're holding anywhere from 2 to sometimes 5 events just in the United States on any given weekend. So right now it's recruiting and onboarding. The next part will be training. Now that they're there, how do we get them trained in? So that's the next thing. Then comes the part stuff that nobody likes. How do you have the hard conversations? Because they're not used to having to have the hard conversations. Our general manager over all the build crew people had to do that in the past. Somebody wasn't doing something they're supposed to be doing. You just called up Matt. Matt took care of it. Now each of the foremen have to do it. So we're talking about how to have the difficult conversations. And then, of course, how do you praise somebody, right? Because, saying, hey, you're awesome to 5 people in a row loses a lot of momentum by the second person. Letting them know exactly why you're saying it, what they did, timely, all those things, right? This is not what they're used to. They're used to walking by somebody, giving them a fist bump, and that meant good job. That doesn't work in today's environment any longer. You have to maybe give a little more than a fist bump. So that's what we're doing. We're trying to give them the tools, but doing it this way though, not just putting it out there for them, because it worked when I was coming up. We had a 3-ring binder of training and onboarding and hiring or whatever it was, and for my generation, for a lot of us, that was fine. Give me a printed 3-ring binder and tell me there's going to be a test at the end, and I was good to go. I would read through it and do it. We are finding that doing it this way, and again, kind of what we're doing here, having conversation about just things, that is helping our younger, and not even younger, just newer. We've got some folks in their 40s that are managing for the first time and leading for the first time. So just even first-time leaders or second-time leaders, we're finding that having a conversation and just talking through whatever it is, then they go do their thing with their people afterwards. They don't need me anymore because they're getting better at it. And then we'll continue that. So our goal is we have a rotating 12-month thing. So come next January, we'll go right back to recruiting and hiring because they'll either be new managers or a little refresher. And if has anything changed since since the last time they hired somebody in September. So that's what we're doing. Love to talk to you in January of next year, let you know if it worked or not, because it's something new for us. We've not provided this kind of one-on-one ish training and getting people together and talking about the challenges they're facing as a leader, because it's just not, that is where they're not comfortable. Like I said, tell them they're losing 2 days because of weather during the build week, and they still have to have the thing together on Saturday morning at 5 a.m. They're comfortable with that. They will pull that off. They will work 14-hour plus days to pull that off. Tell them that they have to have a hard conversation with an employee who's not doing their job, and they freeze up. So my job is to help them be more comfortable with that part of their life.
It's so interesting. It's almost like, I've McKinsey and Company, they did a study on what are the skills needed by leaders in moments of crises. And they said that there's, it's not a guidebook of what to do, but these mindsets and behaviors that help people to be able to focus on what needs to be done right now and not get gripped and locked by what happened. And it's really interesting what you were saying around how it's really this, like these mentorship moments. I call them mentorship moments when we go through this training over a period of time where we are exploring what is our experience as a leader. We engage in practices that can develop our skills in those specific scenarios, like challenging conversations, like taking care of ourselves, like being able to focus when so much is pulling at our attention. Why do you think that sort of this playbook on how to develop those skills has changed, like from back in the day to now, where it's sort of you're finding that it needs to be more immersive, it seems, with at this time in society, right? It just needs you need to like be immersive. I have some ideas around that versus before, where perhaps it could be like, hey, this is the path that you take.
So, when I think about that, I think it's look at the society we live in. We're immersed in stuff all day long, whether you want to be or not, whether it is social media, podcasts, whatever, you're getting information all the time and immediately. So I believe in my mind that today's generation, that's all they know. They never, again, I think back to when I was a kid in the 80s, 70s and 80s, our entertainment was playing outside. That was it. That was our entertainment. It wasn't, I didn't have anything immediate. We read the newspaper the next day or a magazine. I think about Sports Illustrated. You got the updates from stuff that happened last weekend, not as it's happening. And so I think that's part of it. I think that the idea that we can get so much information right now by grabbing our phone, that to keep the same people interested, to keep them focused, we're providing, again, something that we've never done at Spartan. We're creating an intranet so that if somebody needs information on their health benefits or their whatever, they're going to be able to go on their phone, go to the Employee Resource Center, click on benefits, boom, there's my information I need. I don't have to send in what seems like takes a long time, send an email to HR, wait for a response from HR. They don't want that. Now, heck, I don't want that anymore either. And I've been spoiled over the years as we go on and on. I have a little more patience for that, but even I don't want that anymore. So I think that's the biggest part of it. I really do, Michael. It's just that we've made stuff so quick for everybody. What we have to help people understand is just because it's quick doesn't mean it's the solution. So just because I can get the information I need on how to have a tough conversation, as an example, and again, that's something that comes up with us. So that's why it's top of my mind. But just as I have the 5 steps on how to have a tough conversation, doesn't mean I have any idea how to actually do it. Now it needs to be this. Now it needs to be me doing a quick role play with that manager, What did I do wrong? Okay, so now I know what I did wrong. Now have the conversation and walk them through it and try to help them understand, you know, the emotional side of it, that the other person, all those things. And the entire time they are going to be so uncomfortable because they were probably a build crew person with that same person last year. And I remember the first time I ever went from fellow employee to supervisor. That was probably the hardest supervisor job I've ever had because I was just their really good friend. Our people also travel with each other for 12 events or more a year. So they're in the hotel back. I mean, they don't go home when they're traveling, right? They all jump in a pickup and they drive back to the same hotel. And then they probably have dinner together. Then they have breakfast. They're living together for 14 days. So that's why I think part of it is why it can't be a 3-ring binder, or go to the Google Drive, download the PDF. Let me know if you have any questions. That does not work. And I'm okay that it doesn't work, to make sure they get the information they need. I believe 2020 forced us to get really comfortable with this right here. Forced it. But what it did for us, we had to get comfortable. We had to do it. And I think we're better because of it. I think we are accomplishing more now because we all had to go through this in 2020.
Yeah, it's interesting, this sort of trial by fire, this leadership wisdom, wisdom being something that develops through experience. That's sort of what comes up for me as you were sharing, the why. Why do we need to role play? Why do we need to go through these immersive experiences to be able to help us experience what it means to be in those situations that can be incredibly uncomfortable, to become familiar with it so that when it shows up, there's like a readiness. There's a readiness, and also there's a skill. We can sharpen our skill. It's interesting. I'm training mixed martial arts right now, and a lot of the training that we go through are various different scenarios that put us into very uncomfortable situations, and we learn through that combat, of that exchange back and forth, to be ready if and when that shows up. And it's interesting, the other thing that what I was hearing from you is this, we're inundated with information right now. And so just more information, people, I think, not only is it overwhelming, but they need that one. They're craving the immersive experiences. They may not even know it, right? And where when they go through it, there is this growth that happens in it, and it could be uncomfortable, but this new way of learning, it builds lasting memories. I think it really builds this sense of culture that you're building at Spartan. I think it's really informing a lot of what you're doing. And there's this I'll finish off with this. There's this one quote that I came across where there's this: in a wealth of information, there's a poverty of attention. There's just so much information out there that it's almost like you and the team at Spartan is like captivating people's focus by saying, "Hey, we're going to do something different. We're gonna sit down. We're gonna go through this together." When we were talking a while back, you mentioned how there may be people that aren't ready for this. That it could be, we might choose people who, if they don't have an interest, and that's not part of their motivation, that could lead to really uncomfortable experiences. Like you were saying, the first time you became a supervisor, that was really uncomfortable, but there was some growth that came out of it. And can you speak to that a little bit?
I actually had this happen to me. This is one of the first times I became a general manager of a restaurant. And I had an employee that I'm like, and I think we've all had this employee at some point in our careers, that if I could just clone this person, everybody else could go home. Everybody else says, I don't need anybody else. I'm like, I need that person to become one of my supervisors, because I want everybody doing what they're doing. That was one of my biggest mistakes, probably in my career in management in 40 plus years, is I did not ask the person. if they wanted the role. I walked up and said, hey, congratulations. We have an opening as a supervisor, same shift you're working. We'll get you going. And on Monday, we're going to get you trained in on that. Something along those lines, right? It's been a few years, but along those lines. Over the weekend, I got a phone call from that employee giving their notice. They were done. And I'm like, how did we go? How did we get there? And they were very forthright. So listen, I don't want to be a supervisor, but I didn't dare say no, because if I said no, then I'm worried about my job, and that, that is all those kinds of things. I found a couple things out that I did there. One, I didn't ask, but how bad of a manager was I at that time to have not had conversations along the way to already know that? I should have already known that this person, while an absolute A player, and I consider an A player anybody that if you ask me today, would you hire them immediately for the role that they currently have? And if I go yes automatically, then that's an A player on my team. And so how did I not know that this person, who I considered that at the time, was very happy being an employee? That was where they wanted to, and they were comfortable with being comfortable, and they were okay with that. They did not want to be a supervisor, not because it made them uncomfortable. They didn't want the other headache that came with being a supervisor. They were okay being exactly what they were doing. So anybody I talk to, any leader I talk to as they're getting into it, especially if they're doing it for the first time, is, get to know your people, get to know what motivates them. Don't let them be comfortable, because comfortable will eventually, they will start to not do the same work. But what motivates them? What gets them going? I think we've all read enough books and enough articles. It isn't always money. In fact, it's hardly ever money. It's usually something else, whether it is just, you hear about it all the time, transparency. I want clear communication. I want to know what my job is and what my goals are. Yes, money's in there. For some people, it is promotions, whatever. But what is it for each individual person? Because if you do that as a leader, you'll know about your team is incredible. What happens is, and a lot of people take that little piece of advice, get that information, and then do nothing with it. So I now know that Michael is motivated by absolute clear communications of what's going on, and I don't do clear communications with you. I mean, I may not be comfortable being open with you and letting you know what's going on. Then I have either two options. One is tell you, listen, there's some things I can't tell you, Michael. I'd like to tell you all the stuff that's going on that's causing all this stuff over. I can't share all of it with you. I'll share with you what I can. That's probably all you wanted to know. It's probably all you wanted to hear, is that truth. Not telling you anything at all is the opposite of what I just asked you last week, and now I'm not even doing it, right? So that's what I learned. I have not done it since then. I have not. Now, I don't wait for someone to come tell me that they're interested in a promotion, because I do find out. I talk to them. What are their ambitions? What do they want to do? And then now here's where the hard conversation comes in, though, right? Somebody who's like, I want to be a manager. And 6 months in, you make a roadmap, make a plan. And 6 months in, you can tell that is not going to be the end game here. Now you have to have that conversation and let them know where your goal is, what you're trying to get to, is not one that we're going to be able to get to. Two options. You may have to go find employment someplace else. Maybe working construction at Spartan is not your thing. We have 12 other major departments within Spartan, so leaving the company isn't. So that's option one. We go find something else within our company, or it may be a whole different thing. Maybe you do need to go work a whole different industry. That's a hard conversation to have, but it's one that they deserve. They deserve to have that conversation with somebody who hopefully by now you've built a relationship with, right? Hopefully when they hear you say that mentor part comes back in. Like, I think back to, I was going to school at one point to be a math teacher, until my mentor from high school, my math teacher, who I wanted to be Mr. Mutzenberger. Those of you who are maybe listening from West Fargo High would know Mr. Mutzenberger. Amazing math teacher, right? I was going to school at North Dakota State to be a math teacher because of him until I student taught for him. At the end of 2 weeks of a quick little break that we did, he pulled me aside and said, you need to find a different career. You don't have the patience to be a math teacher. That was devastating. But I got it from somebody who I had a relationship with. He walked me through it. He mentored me and just was honest. He was very honest. And so off to business I went. And I left the teaching part of my life. If everybody could have a Mr. Mutzenberger in their back, behind them, backing them up to be brutally honest when need be. When I told him I wanted to be a teacher, he was super excited. Wrote my letter of recommendation to the school and all that stuff. But then when the time came, I had the hard conversation.
Wow. There's just there's so many valuable insights that can be drawn from what you were sharing there. And I think just something that I'm noticing is that value of listening, the value of being present with your teams, with the organization. Something that I've heard even throughout some of the stories that you've shared, how you've had to sort of rethink how you approach, how you set up the infrastructure of the organization, how do you support teams, and where does that come from? Where do these insights come from? One approach is like there might be one person that has all the ideas and say, hey, we need to do this, and this. Somehow have all the answers to such a complex reality. The other possibility is that we listen. We listen to what people are telling us, and then we respond to exactly what they're asking for, and we build that trust and transparency over time to see who's ready for certain roles, who can be a good fit, who needs some support, who needs to have a difficult conversation, but it comes from this openness to listen, to that you're all embracing, that you're embracing with your teams, you're fostering, and that ability to have that candor to say, hey, I appreciate you for what you've done. And also, hey, this may not be a right fit. So what other options can we have here? And both could be uncomfortable, if it's sharing the appreciation as well as that, hey, you know what, this might not be the place to go. But it comes from that place of being present. And that even goes to some of these these great mentorship moments that we have, like this Mr. Mutzenberger, right? Whom was there for you, even if it's difficult, but they were there for you. And so how do we foster that, right? How do we foster those moments? And I think it really takes that it requires being a very intentional leader. This is something that I've been noticing is that willingness to show up, that willingness to be there with the team when it's uncomfortable, to say, hey, what's the most difficult lift sometimes? Sometimes say, what is the most difficult lift? All right, I'm going to do that, and then we're going to get through this, right? And I'm going to listen, and I'm here to support. Wow, that's, I think that's a masterclass almost right there in how to support your teams through difficult times. And I really want to hammer that down because I do really resonate that from my own experience. And from the research that we're seeing, I think, the stories that you've shared there are really on point. I'm interested here, I would love to explore just and we know that to lead well, we need to sustain ourselves, right? And you shared some powerful stories about how you integrate physical and mental fitness into your life, including the 75 Hard Challenge and your work with charities and adaptive athletes. Can you tell us a bit more about how you take care of your own mental and physical health? What's your personal practice for staying aligned, energized, resilient?
It starts with routine. So I'm a routine kind of person. Yeah, I wake up between 3:30 and 4 o'clock every morning, whether I'm on vacation, weekends, whatever. Just it's a routine. What I do in that next little bit is where it flexes a little bit, whether I come into work or whether I stay at home and do stuff at home. But a workout gets my day started. Some kind of workout. And that's not necessarily, hit the gym and lift a bunch of weights. It could be yoga. It could be stretching, whatever it might be, but it is every day something gets done. Again, it could be a walk. It could be go walk for 5 kilometers. So it's not like it's going to be, again, 2024, I did burpees every day in 2024. So that was exerting myself every day. But here in 25, it's changed a little bit, but that's my start. And then I end my day by reading every night. That came from 75 Hard. You and I talked about this, Michael. I hate to read. I hated reading before 75 Hard. But that was part of it, was reading every day. As if you missed a day, you start over from scratch again. So I'm not one, I hate starting over something that I'm working on. So I force myself to do it. Now it is part of every single night before I go to bed. Ironically, right now I'm reading a book on how to hire better, how to hire better people from the get-go. And the books I'm reading currently are ones that I'm going to use for my lunch and learns with my managers. So that's become my thing for 25. In between, I am very focused on what I get to do here at Spartan. So whether it is dealing with the HR stuff, whether all the stuff that comes with HR that I never knew before a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, because this is my first foray into full HR and all the learning that comes with that. But I also get to work with all of our charities. So all the charities that we work with and foundations we work with at Spartan, whether it's military founded ones, civilian founded ones, whatever it is, I get to work with them. And that is where my actual energy comes from. That is, again, I heard this the other day. Someone said about, you should go after your passion. You should work for your passion. And I'm like, yeah, I do that. And then they said, no, you shouldn't. You should work for and do what gives you energy. What is the thing that if you did it all day long, 10, 12, 15 hours a day, you'd still have energy at the end of it? I'm like, the foundations I work with, making sure that we're helping them move forward and whatever their mission is, right? Again, I'm a very fortunate person. I get to call my job one that I get to go out. We just did it at Raymond James Stadium. We took a person that was in a assisted walking apparatus around Raymond James Spartan Race, and took another gentleman. I walked with a gentleman who just struggles with just his motor functions, and I got to cross the finish line with this person. I got to see the excitement in this person's face when they crossed the finish line. And they're a little bigger than me, so when they hugged me, I think it might have bruised a rib. But I'd do it all over again, right? That was a long day. Got in the car at 2:00 in the morning, drove to Raymond James, did all the stuff, got back home about 10 o'clock that night. All the way home, I was energized by the memories of that day. All the way home. So that's what gets me going. Right? It has always been in my mind, what is my thing right now? For a while, I was a Beachbody coach and had people that I was helping get better, get healthier. That was my motivation. That was my passion. That was the thing that I didn't care about my 9-to-5 job as far as wearing me out, because I knew when I got home, I was going to, be on the phone. Because again, this is before all the stuff we have now, but I was on the phone with somebody and we're talking through it. How did your workouts go? Whatever that passion was. And that's now my passion gets to be the charities and foundations I work with. I just got an email this morning. I got to reach out from the folks at Fort Bragg in North Carolina, thanking me for their event they did in Fayetteville with us. And they were the special operators recruiting battalion were at our event. They actually ran our barbed wire crawl by yelling at all of our people going through there, tell them to get down lower. And they were so excited that they want to do it in Hawaii. So they're thanking me for letting them be at our event. And I'm like, are you kidding? The people who came to me afterwards was, that barbed wire crawl was the best, hardest and best thing I've ever done, because we let them design how hard it was going to be. And it was horrible. But Spartans, love horrible when it comes to especially the barbed wire crawl. So again, I get to do things that I can't believe on certain days that it's what I do for a living. So that's what gets me going. I'm part of the AmVets here in St. Cloud, Florida. I sat outside on Memorial Day and cooked burgers and brats for all the veterans who came in, and we provided lunch for them all. And they're walking up to me, thanking me for cooking them a burger. And I'm like, but I get to cook this burger because you served and protected my freedoms. But they're thanking me for it. And again, that's the stuff in my mind that we forget. I guess sometimes we forget what we have. And when you can go back and grab a hold of it, and you get to do something. And I look back at the stuff I've done in my life. There's very few times where I say I get to go do this here, and what I get to do with my charities I work with and the partners I've gotten to know. That's what I get to do. So that's what drives me. That's what gets me going. That's what gives me my energy every day.
Yeah, for everyone that's listening here, I think really it's a great opportunity to reflect on what provides us with passion. I think this is something for me that's coming up for me. I'm reflecting on where am I drawing inspiration and passion from? And it's really interesting. So many times I hear that it's from doing something that either gives back or is greater than ourselves, right? And how are we continually developing ourselves? Be it reading, exploring something new that can provide us that sense of mastery and growth. How are we taking care of ourselves, right? Mentally, physically, are we taking time for ourselves and prioritizing that as like the first thing in the morning? And some of us can be a Spartan like Dan here and have those super early mornings, and then making it like, what does that look like for you, right? Because I think everybody is unique and perfect just the way they are. And how can we explore what does that Spartan like approach look like for us? And waking up, taking that walk. It could be a walk around the block. At the end of the day, it could be that book that you read. It could be getting that movement if you can move throughout the day, connecting with people that really inspire you. Right? There's really functional ways to be inspired by this, and I think this has been a really great opportunity for me to do that. Listen, as we wrap up, Dan, I want to circle back to this theme of discomfort as a catalyst for growth. For leaders listening today, what's one piece of advice you'd give about how to lean into discomfort rather than to avoid it as a path to growth and leadership excellence?
So I'm gonna lean on my Spartan experience and say, if you're gonna wait until you're ready before you do whatever it is that's in front of you, you will never be ready. Same mentality we take at Spartan. If you wait to sign up for a race, it doesn't need to be a Spartan race. It can be run a 5K. But if you wait until you're ready to sign up for it, you'll never sign up for it. So if you wait until you're ready for discomfort, you wait until you're ready to go apply for that role that you don't believe you qualify for or that you're ready for, I'll do it when I'm ready. I'll take one more class. I'll do one more thing. You'll be saying that in 5 more years. The exact same thing in 5 more years. Go do it. Sign up for it, apply for it, whatever that is. Now you have the answer. The answer is yes. The answer is I'm going to do it. Now figure out the roadmap, because there is a roadmap. And if you don't know what the roadmap is, somebody does. Somebody somebody you've heard of, somebody whose book you've read, somebody whose podcast you've listened to, whatever it is, somebody knows the roadmap. But the roadmap doesn't matter if you don't already have who gets in their car today and starts driving, turns on their GPS and doesn't put in where I'm going to. We all do. That's how it tells us where to go. You don't just jump in and start driving. You know where you're going to when you get in your car. Should be the same with the other, whether it's your personal life. Yeah, I'll propose when I lose 20 pounds. I'll propose no, do it now and then start the path. So that's my suggestion. And if you don't mind, I'd like to drop something in here for your listeners. So if one of those things are, I will sign up for a Spartan race or a Tough Mudder race when, Michael and I are going to make it really, really simple and take away at least one of the blockers. We're going to take one of the roadblocks out of your way. For you, if you have a company and you've got some coworkers you want to pull together, because I will tell you from personal experience, the first Spartan race I ever did was with fellow employees. We were disjointed. We were not going in the right direction. We went and did a Spartan race together, and people who did not get along in the office all of a sudden had to rely on each other on the course. That team stayed together until the company sold. The entire team, nobody left after that race. So I'm inviting everybody who's listening, Michael. All they got to do is email me directly, and it's just my name. So dan.mcdonald@spartan.com. You reach out to me. I will cover the registration fee for anybody listening. For you, your coworkers, whether it's Canada or the United States, I will cover it for you to come out to one of our races on me.
That's amazing. Dan, thank you so much. I'm gonna take it. I'm gonna take up that offer. There we go.
Well, you have no option. Your wife already does them. You have no option.
That's it exactly. But now I'm gonna bring the Mindful Institute team, and we're gonna do the next one. That's an amazing offer. I highly recommend it. Anybody. We're gonna make sure to put into the description your contact information to reach out about that or any other questions you may have of Dan. Also, I would urge you to connect on LinkedIn. Would that be a good place for people as well to connect with you, Dan?
There you go.
Great. So thank you so much, Dan. This was an amazing conversation. Your stories, your insights, and your willingness to dive into discomfort are truly inspiring. To our listeners, thank you for joining us for this episode of Leading Minds Revealed. Be sure to check out Dan's offer and explore the world of Spartan Race to bring a little more discomfort and growth into your leadership journey. Until next time, be well. We'll see you soon.
Leading Minds Revealed podcast requires more than a conversation. It takes action, research, and collective wisdom. If today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your insights. Join the conversation and help us shape the future together. We'll be back with more stories, strategies, and real-world solutions that are making a difference for everyone. In the meantime, be sure to subscribe, rate, write a review, and share it with someone you think would benefit from it too. Thanks for listening, and see you on the next episode.